Hello and welcome to the Ascender Registration Bootcamp for new users. My name is Kirsten Boyle. I'm one of the consultants on the Ascender student team here at Region 10, and I will be walking through our registration application in Ascender, particularly for new users, those who are new to Ascender or newer to Ascender. So welcome, and we'll get started. Kind of a session overview. We're going to talk about some basic navigation options within the Ascender application. And I just saw a typo that says attendance. It will be in registration, but it is applicable to multiple applications in Ascender. So while we'll be focusing on the registration application, this is available in attendance and grade reporting and a few other of those student applications. So we'll talk about that navigation piece, and then we will basically go through the three areas of the registration application. We'll go through maintenance, utilities, and reports. And then we do have some appendix items, particularly how to enter a no-show record for a student and how to re-enroll a student who is a no-show. So we'll go ahead and start with the registration application. So this is the homepage of Ascender. You'll notice the applications are listed on the left. Now, because I am a user that has full access, I have access to several applications, all the applications really in Ascender for both business and student. So um, if you log in and look and you don't have as many applications as I do, don't worry. It's just based on your security access. So you may have quite a few less. We are going to navigate to registration, and that's where we're going to be working in the software today. So with registration, or really any application homepage, there are a couple of different highlights navigation-wise want to draw your attention to. So one of them is the student information button. The student information button is just a quick report that you can pull with some demographic data for individual students. You can sort it by a school year, or rather run it with a parameter for a particular school year. If you have historical access, you can run it for prior years. A campus, a grade level. You can even type in the student's name, or I like to use the directory. I can search the student's name here, select them. Let's try that again. Select them and it will pull their information up. So this report is, again, more of a demographic report. It does have a few pieces of information from the different um, areas of Ascender applications, but you've got your demographic information, mainly your name, the student ID, the school year. It's going to show their entry date, their student indicators, particularly their eligibility code, their contact information. And we'll notice a lot of this as we go through the registration application, all the demographic tabs and the student enrollment tabs. Counselor information, CTE status indicators, if they were promoted. That probably won't show if you've just rolled into the new year like I have, because those year-end status codes get set at the end of the year or toward the end of the year typically, or when you do the scheduling process. Their graduation plan, you've got their parent contact or guardian contact information, their WR enroll information, their enrollment information, attendance, their semester like grades and courses, and then also their health information will be on here as well. Their immunizations, their vision screening, stuff like that. So this report can be helpful. Maybe you'll run it when you're withdrawing a student and you just want to have this information for their cumulative folder, or maybe I have seen it used before when a student has an emergency and needs to be taken by paramedics or an ambulance and needs to leave the school. they'll want information pertaining to the student. So this is a good report to run because it has all of this demographic information and contact information as well as the health information on there. So that's what this student information button does. It's also available in the report area in registration, but this particular button is in several of the student applications. You can just exit to move off of that screen. Um, Another option you have is to change application. So when we are in maybe one application, we want to move to another application, we're going to click the registration or whichever application you're on, and it's going to pull up a list of applications that you have access to, and you can go to those applications. So for example, I'm in at registration, but maybe I want to go over to attendance. And I go over here and now I'm in the attendance application. It opened a new tab for me. And speaking of tabs, we recommend that you only have one tab open per application in Ascender at a time. The reason for this is because Ascender is a web-based software. So the data is working in the background of the browser. And if I have two instances of an application open at the same time, and I'm working in both of those tabs, the data is not going to save. It could get tied up and cause issues in the background. You may hear us, if you're brand new, you may hear us and other people saying clear browser cache and history. We say that a lot because again, it's clearing out any data in the browser that is hung up or may not be up to date. We do have quite a few updates, especially with PEIMS, how it's been this summer. And this last school year, we have had a lot of updates. And every time Ascender has an update, it's important to clear your browser cache and history. And if you're in Chrome, which I typically use, we recommend Chrome, Firefox, and I believe Safari if you're on an Apple computer. But Chrome and Firefox are the ones that are most compatible, not Microsoft Edge. We do see quite a few issues with that. But I just like to go to my delete browsing data area here from my browser screen. And then I do an advanced delete browsing data and just do it for all time for these first four options. And that usually clears the cache really well. So we do recommend doing that. Again, we also recommend just having one instance of a browser open. Again, because if you're working on more than one at a time, your data might not save or it might become corrupted in the background and cause issues. Another thing we also recommend is that you don't just click out on the X of a browser in Ascender. Again, for the same reason, when you close the browser this way, it doesn't really shut everything down in the background. It could still be working. So if you're just Xing out and then you're going back in, it may not be updating the data properly. So we do recommend that you use the arrow here. There is an arrow at the top right corner. And if you click that, it will tell you it'll just take you out of the browser application browser entirely or give you a message. It depends on where you are. For example, registration gives you this, you have successfully exited the application and may close the browser. So then you can click the X. If you're in attendance and you close it, it just kicks you out. So definitely recommend using that exit arrow instead of clicking on the X right away. So that'll help make sure that your database is running smoothly and you don't have any corruption issues with maintaining the data. Another option you have is this change button option here. And if you have access to multiple campuses or multiple school years, you will have the option to change. So because I'm a full access user in Ascender, I am able to switch school years and I'm also able to switch campuses. So I can select my choice and click apply. And then I was on the high school. Now when I log in and look at information, I will be on the middle school campus. So that's what that change button does. Another area to draw your attention to is down here at the bottom right corner of the screen is the help menu. So this area is where the documentation is housed for all the processes in Ascender. So if you are in a specific area, so for example, I'm on the student enrollment tab demo 1 and I click the help button, it is going to pull up the student enrollment area. And then I can use the tabs on the table of contents on the left side of the screen to look at specifically the area, like the demo 1 tab, which we're going to go through all of these. So the reason I bring this up is if you're ever in the software and you're like, man, I don't know what local use code is on the demo 2 tab. Like I don't remember that, or I don't know what that is. I can go to the help. I can scroll down and I can look at the local use code area and I can be like, oh, okay. They're displayed according to the descriptions entered in this table and therefore local use. Okay. So it may not answer every question or the question you have in its entirety, but it is a place to start, basically, if you are needing a quick answer or just a little bit more information. The nice thing too is you have access to a lot of other application information, but also you have the training guides. The training guides are set up by TCC and are kept up to date, and they cover a variety of areas in the software. So they have full-on training guides that are dozens of pages, sometimes hundreds of pages, depending on the application, like scheduling, long, but they also have quick guides if you need to look for quick things. Um, and then in addition to that, so this is on the help, I will draw your attention to our Region 10 Ascender website. So here is where we keep not only the documentation that we typically use a lot from TCC from the help area, but our own documentation. So like this PowerPoint and the recordings of our trainings, this recording will be housed there. We also have a lot of how-to documents on just quick things to do that are pretty frequently done in the system. If you don't have access to this, you can request access here on our website, and we'll give you access, and then you would have access to our newsletter and our documentation and our training schedule. But if you go to our documentation area, each application is broken down by in a folder. And so, for example, if we're doing registration, you'd be able to go here to the registration application. You'll see the new recording once it's done and the updated PowerPoint here for this school year. So this is last year's information. And then, so you can back out of it here in the drive, or you can go this way and look at the folders. Another application, or I'm sorry, another folder that's helpful is the how-to docs. These are just going to give you how to enter accelerated instruction or how to assign pass-fail indicators, how to create a calendar, how to enter coursework for transfer students, how to pre-register a student, all kinds of things. We have several documents and we try to stay on top of keeping those updated, especially if there are changes. We're also adding new ones from time to time as we come across them and get requests for them. So it's not a complete how-to on every single thing in Ascender, but we try to keep most processes in here as we can. So how-to is very helpful. And then, like I said, we have all of our training documentation is here that we keep up to date. So not only do you have the help area in Ascender itself, but also our training documentation on our website. So just wanted to draw your attention to that. And in the help area of Ascender, you also have a search feature where if you know a keyword, you can type it in and it will pull up any matching page names. Scheduling is a pretty um, broad term. So there are quite a few things that pull up for scheduling, but if you weren't quite sure where to search for that information, um, you can also use this table of contents that kind of breaks down the different applications. So for student. So that is the help button. So let's go ahead and jump into, we have a lot of items to cover. Again, for this boot camp, for the purposes of the boot camp, we're showing you kind of a full spectrum of what is in registration. Not all of the information may apply to you specifically since jobs vary so much by campus and by district. So a lot of the stuff we may show you may not apply, but we still like to show, especially new people, um, just where things are housed so you know that there is kind of a setup in the background. Whether or not you have your hand in setting that information up, sometimes it can be nice to know where it's coming from. So be patient as we go through and try not to be discouraged if it's a lot of information. We're just kind of taking it all in. And of course, we're here for you if you do have questions on specific processes that might pertain particularly to your job. So let's get into the maintenance area first. We're going to talk about, there's quite a few moving parts here, different pieces of information. So hang in there with me, but we're going to talk about the district profile, what's all included in that. We're going to talk about the campus profile. So what is applicable to all campuses in the district, what's applicable to a specific campus. We're going to go over that student enrollment tab and all of the tabs like we just saw over here in demo 2. We're going to go through all of this information, the non-enrolled student tab, what prior year leaver tracking, little bit of parent portal and online registration. We do have specific training for parent portal and online registration, so we won't get into too much depth as far as that goes because it's its own training. So check it out if you need to. We do that regularly every school year, usually at the beginning of the calendar year. So about February, around the time we also talk about scheduling. And then we'll briefly go over core collections because that's where it's housed in registration, but that is more of a PEIMS realm type area. And we do have guides on that. And we tend to go over that information in our PEIMS workshop. So we'll go ahead and get started. I will kind of flip back and forth between the PowerPoint, but I'm going to stick mostly to this area in Ascender, stick more toward Ascender to show you in the software how things go. But you're welcome to follow along in the PowerPoint if you would like to. So one of the first things you're going to see in registration in the maintenance is the district profile. Now, again, this is probably not information that you're going to update, but it's still nice to know where it's housed. This is where the district name is, what the county is, the website, the region number, it's the address. So for whatever reason, the district address needed to be updated or the superintendent, that's where this information is housed in the demographic info. You also have control info. So this is, and again, applicable to the district, even though I'm at the high school campus, it is a district level area I can update. But this allows you to set up some control options on how you handle state ID and local ID assignments and a couple other things impacting registration. So for example, it's going to show you the ending school year automatically pulls from the school year that you're currently in, which we've already rolled into our 25-26 school year. So depending on when you're watching this, you may still be in 24-25. But it's going to pull up the current school year, whatever your database is in. um, your first, last, and next available state ID. So this is typically something a PEIMS coordinator will fill out, but if um, this is for if you have students that come to you that don't have a social or do not provide a social and you want to give them a state ID, you usually get this block of numbers from TEA. And so when you have that block, you can go in and enter the information. So whatever the first available is, the last available, and next available. And so we'll see this when we get to the registration piece, like demo one, student enrollment stuff, you'll see kind of where that falls. If the student does not have a social, you can automatically assign it if it's set up in this area. And then you have the option selected to assign state ID number. If you don't, if you manually want to do it, that's fine too. You wouldn't have anything entered here. Here's where a default home language is set. And then if you also want to auto assign student IDs, meaning the 6-digit local ID that your district uses to assign to your students, so you keep track of them in the system, you can have that auto assigned as well. So you would select that option and enter that code here, whatever the next ID would be. So some people do the auto assign. Some people, some districts, others like to do it manually and have a manual tracking system. And if that's the case, then you just simply wouldn't select this and that would be blanked out. And then you have a couple other options here. You don't really need to worry about this create star 2020 waiver records or do not create. That was applicable during COVID. It's just this option is still here, so ignore it. But this option, campus can maintain record status. This one, we generally recommend to not have it selected, only because having it selected allows anyone to go in and change the record status on a student. And those are automatically set based on enrollment and withdrawal and all of that. And so if you go in and manually update something, it might throw the system off. Now, there are scenarios in which you can manually update a record status. And if you're sitting here like, I don't know what a record status is, don't worry, we'll get to it in a little bit when we get to the student enrollment piece. But it's basically telling the software how the student is enrolled. Are they active and staying on this campus? Are they active and going to another campus next year? It's just how is their record housed in the software? And so the system already knows based again on the entry withdrawal record and stuff like that, what their record status should be. So we say exercise caution when keeping this selected, because if you manually update a record status, it can cause some issues. So if you run into a scenario where you think that might be what you need to do, reach out to us so we can counsel with you on it. But generally, we just recommend that you keep it unchecked. And then if you did need to manually update it, you can always check it, make the manual update and uncheck it. So this is just an honor. The reason we recommend having it off too is it's an all or nothing. So anyone who has access to student enrollment demo 1 tab would have access to change anything if this was enabled. So there's not a way to just limit it to one person. And then you also have the option to pre-print the withdrawal form. So I'm going to leave it checked. Sorry, backtracking just a little bit. I'm going to leave this checked so you can see it when we get to student enrollment. Pre-print withdrawal form just allows you to pre-print the withdrawal form for a student when they're withdrawing. So, all right. Special ed info. This is specific to if your district participates in the Regional Day School for the Deaf. And so if so, you would enter this information here. Again, more of a PEIMS role than your day-to-day campus staff, but just so you know, that's what this tab is for. Our RDSD, Regional Day School for the Deaf. And attendance zones. So Not many districts use this feature, but we do have quite a few districts that are growing. Maybe all of you are growing. I know this area has been booming. So your district may be getting bigger and bigger, and you might have more campuses that you're adding to your district, and then you might need to use attendance zones at some point. So this is for more of a larger school district that have multiple campuses, and you want to zone your attendance. So making sure that students in certain areas of your town um, are going to the school that you're zoned for, or they're zoned for rather. Sorry, not eloquent at the moment, but um, there's a little bit of setup. This is where you would enable it. You would simply click the enable attendance zones, and then there's a feature to auto update home campus from attendance zones. But uh, if you want to enable attendance zones, you select this option. And then there are a few other pieces to attendance zones we'll briefly touch on. But if that is something that your district is looking to do, reach out to us so we can, again, counsel with you about it. And then we have a state reporting tab. So this one is going to be important for PEIMS reporting purposes. There's a few different areas that apply. Well, all of this applies to PEIMS but that are particularly of note. So the first one is the ASVAB. If your district offers the ASVAB, you would select which option. Your family engagement plan link is where you would enter that family engagement plan. So again, probably more of a PEIMS coordinator role would be in this kind of area, but enter your family engagement plan link there. And then you also have the type of LEA that you are. Are you a charter school or a school district? And then your ed org category. So if you're an ESC, you're going to be an LEA. So not that you need to change that, but there are other options. And then your program evaluation type, this is indicating the type of program evaluation tool that your district is using that's going to report for pre-K students, if you have those. So you would select that. And then you do have your GT information. So if your school offers GT and you want to report that information, as you should, then you can select the GT program types that you offer here. So add if you need more, delete if you don't need more. Just click the trash can and save. And then you have your CTE programs of study over here. You'll notice one of these is blank. That was due to, so this table changes. Ascender updates this based on the most recent data standard. So it looks like there was a program of study we offered that's no longer valid. So that's why this is blank, and I can just actually delete that and get rid of it. But here's where those programs of study are entered. So if you're a PEIMS coordinator watching this and you're like, where do I enter my programs of study? State reporting tab under district maintenance, district profile. All right. So backing up a little bit and talking about attendance zones again, the attendance zone tab is its own tab here. So once you enable it in district maintenance, once you enable it here in the attendance zones area, and I have it disabled, it shows down here, but here in the attendance zone area is where you will set up all of your attendance zones. So the city, zip code, and basically the number, street number, street name, range for where they'll be zoned for attendance and what campuses they apply to. And you have a current year tab and a next year tab. So if I'm setting up attendance zones for the 25-26 school year, I'm going to be on this tab. If I'm looking to set it up for the 26-27 school year, I'll be on this tab. So you can update attendance zones for the next school year while you're still in the current year if you use this tab. So again, you're going to, if you're wanting to set up these zones, get with us so we can kind of walk you through it and counsel with you about it. All right, local program codes. So local programs are offered at your LEA and they can be PEIMS related. So like your 504 or your additional days, dyslexia, bilingual, summer school. You'll see those type of program codes here. You can also have local, like truly local program codes, like clubs or like we have a cross country here. We used to use this for pandemic electronic benefit transfer back in the day, or remote learner, that kind of thing, women's choir. So you can see there's a myriad of options. These are specific to your LEA. So you can add more programs by clicking the add button, giving it a 3-character program code and title. And then TEA crisis code is if you needed to set it up specific, a crisis code specifically like Hurricane Harvey or something like that, where there was a disaster crisis that needed to be reported. But if it is a PEIMS reportable local program, you'll want to make sure that that code, that PEIMS reportable code is tied to this code that you're setting up. So you would just select that. If it's not a PEIMS reportable code, a local program code, you don't need to worry about that. And then this move program to next year is just you're telling the system, yes, I want this program created next year when we run our annual student data rollover. So local program codes have to be set up in this area, in this table at the district level before you can select them at the campus level, which we'll get into in a little bit. We'll show you what that looks like. So that's where the local programs are housed. And then we have several tables in our district area still. So again, we're still applying, these are applicable across the district to all campuses. So you've got your withdrawal reasons. Now there are system coded withdrawal reasons, typically the ones that are from PEIMS, from the TWEDs, the valid withdrawal codes. There's also some local codes. You can set those up locally. So you've got your system ones on top that are hard-coded by Ascender, and then user-defined codes that you can create at the bottom. And notice you'll have that add button feature. You've got your records requested codes. So this is like a locally tracked table that you can create for any records requests that you get. And I believe it's on the Demo 2 tab, which we'll get to in a little bit, that will show you these codes, or that where these codes will allow you to code them. So if you get records requests, this is just telling, this table is specifying where that's coming from, out of state, private school, within your county, within your district, or within your state. You could have more or less than this. Again, this is a locally tracked thing for your LEA. All right, so withdrawal clearance checks. These are, again, locally tracked codes that you can set up, but it's just giving you some options for clearance checks for when students withdraw. So they may be things that you want to include on the withdrawal form that you want to make sure the student has checked off before they're completely withdrawn. So maybe like their locker combination is turned in, or their locker lock, that they've paid off their dues in the cafeteria, that they've returned all their library books or their textbooks, they've returned their band instrument, what have you. Again, these are locally tracked things that you as a district can set up to ensure that students pass these checks before they are completely withdrawn. Country codes, those are just different countries. You can populate these codes in Demo 2. So we'll again see that in a little bit, but just their birth country. You can notate where a student is coming from on their birth certificate and add that to Demo 2. You have some local use codes. So these are just district defined labels essentially that allow you to customize certain fields in either the at-risk tab or the Demo 2 tab. And a lot of times these will be used, well, I mean, they vary by district. Sometimes they'll be used, I've seen them used for registration purposes if you want to confirm locally that students have completed their registration form. We have seen there aren't any easy reports to pull for online registration or returning student registration, rather that the student has completed, because once you accept them into the system, they're already there. But this was one way around that, to have a registration form checkbox that whoever was processing those pending updates could go in and select this code on that student's Demo 2 tab to say, yes, they've completed all their registration forms. But it's a user-defined field, so it's going to show as user 1 character, user 2 character, so on and so forth. All you have to do is type over that and then save it, and it will now show that field as this. And then you can also choose whether or not to make it required. If you do make it required, it will require someone to fill in that field, check the box on Demo 2 before leaving it. So it will pop up at you and say, this field is required before you can move on. So just be aware of that if you're going to make a field required. Then you have your current year transfer factor. So these are codes. Again, system defined codes are here. Any user defined codes you want to set up is fine, but these are codes for the various reasons why students were able to enroll in your district if you have a capped campus enrollment. And typically that's in reference to attendance zones. So if you have attendance zones, you may have a capped campus enrollment count. And if you want to override that, you can select as to why that is okay. That would be for current year. Same thing applies in this tab, just for next year. And that is it for the district profile. Now we're going to move on to our campus profile. So we'll start with our campus information maintenance. So again, district applied to all campuses in the district. Now we're looking at specific campuses. I'm currently on the high school. I could, still being on the high school here, type in another school, my middle school, and pull that information here. I can also change campus and do it that way, but I'm going to go back to my high school. And I'm looking at the demographic info. So this is where the campus is, the campus name, street number, and phone number is housed. So at the district level, we had that demographic info. It was pertaining to the district area, your district level office. Now it's campus level. And then if you are a charter school, this is where you would select if you're participating in the charter school wait list and that charter enrollment capacity. So this is our test database, so we have it selected. But if you are not a charter school, then you would not have this option here. All right, control info. Again, this is mostly going to be set up for you already. It's not really that you're going to have to go in and set things up. It is a good place to reference so you know where things are housed. And also if you're a PEIMS coordinator or a designated campus or district level staff that needs to go in and verify this information, this is where you can. A lot of this is going to be PEIMS related. So anything that's bolded is a PEIMS related field. So here's where you would set the low and high grade level. Our high school is 9 to 12. Maybe yours is going to be just 10 to 12. If that's the case for this school year, then you would need to make sure that you set that appropriately. There are other factors that go into changing the grade level, so you can't just do it willy-nilly, but this is basically where that information is housed. Accreditation, if you're a College Board campus, you can enter that code there. Enter the default track. So this would be the track that defaults for any new enrollments. You can add it here. Typically, it'll be your track 1. That doesn't mean you can't go in and change the track for a student. It's just the default. You can exclude from district reporting. So if this is a campus that you're no longer using, maybe it got closed or you consolidated to a different campus and you're not using it. It's mainly for historical purposes. You could exclude it from district reporting. However, if it is supposed to report information, make sure that is not selected. You can select the school type. So this is a high school. Again, capped to campus is going to be in reference to if you have attendance zone set up. And then here's where your PEIMS reportable stuff comes in. So full day pre-K waiver, if you're participating in additional days program, an ELO, the number of bullying and cyberbullying incidences are entered here. Here's stuff for OCR that you want to select. If you're a campus-wide residential facility campus, you would select that and then add those facility options down here. You've got your campus enrollment type that you can set. And if you're participating in NSLP, you can add that NSLP type here. And then you have your principal counselor tab. So this is an important tab. It houses your principal and assistant principal, your counselor, any professionals at your campus that you want to add access for in registration. But this is also what gives them, I guess, access. Well, you as a coordinator or campus staff would create an account for them in teacher portal, admin teacher portal or parent portal, but they would need to be entered here. And so if you're adding a new record, you need to give them a locally determined advisor number. So it's 3 digits and it can be any number that isn't currently in use. And it's just specific to your campus. And then look for their staff ID before filling in their name. So I can go to the ellipsis here and I can select the individual and it populates that information. So the staff ID is coming from the business side. So if there's a particular staff member you're looking for in this table and cannot find them, get with your business staff and see what's going on. They may not have entered them in the system yet. The role ID is just so you know what their role is. There's only 4 options: the principal, assistant principal, school counselor, and other. We'll make her a school counselor. If your counselors or other people that you're setting up are dealing with specific grade levels or name ranges, because you can also do alpha, you can set that here. That just helps with filtering, like referrals and things like that. It'll only pull the specific grade level that they're assigned to or the name range. And then you can put in their work phone number. And then this is important too. If you want them to be a discipline approver, so processing discipline, make sure to select that, and then it gives you an option to include their email address if you want them to receive emails when referrals have been submitted online through Teacher Portal. So you can select that option and then enter their email address. Otherwise, you'll just make them a discipline approver and save. Oh, and so this is in reference. So I'm getting this pop-up message because I don't have, let me save that. There we go. There we go. Now it let me save. So now you are good to go. And that individual has been added to the principal counselor tab. And so when we go over grade reporting, the boot camp for grade reporting, we'll show you how to set up an account for Teacher Portal, an admin account for Teacher Portal. So they're going to need to be added to this area in order to get them an admin Teacher Portal account. So even though it's in registration, it does tie into Teacher Portal or into grade reporting and Teacher Portal. All right, so you have your campus local program codes. We talked about the district level local program codes, so that's where the setup is. But not every campus is going to have every local program code. So these are campus specific local program codes. And you can add them by clicking here and then selecting from the drop down. Again, it has to be built in the district local program code area before it's available here in the campus local program area. And then this move program to next year just gives you 3 options. Do you want to keep the students enrolled in this program when you roll it over? Do you want to drop the students and move the program over as well? Or do you want to just drop the program and not even have it move over? So you can determine how you want that. And then save it. And then when we get to the student enrollment tab and we get to the local program tab, we'll see these codes come into play, how we can add them to individual students. One thing I forgot to mention in going to the local program code where you set it up, I forgot to talk about this print local programs by campus button. And so this is just going to generate a report. We'll just run it really quick so you can see. Okay, so it takes all the local programs that have been created and breaks them down by what's been attached to each campus in your district. So it just gives you a report format of those codes. So you need to know on a, quick basis or just an overview of what codes are being used at which campuses, you can run this report instead of going campus by campus and looking and seeing what's in their local programs, local program codes. All right, and then campus programs, this is a PEIMS field. If your campus, your district and your campus specifically participate in ELO, expanded learning opportunity, this is where you would add that information. And you can retrieve by campus and then click the add. Well, I did retrieve and it populated a line there, but let's say you have more than one, you can add more than one. But you would enter the type, the activity, the days, year, and the minutes, day, and then save that. And then that would pull for PEIMS. So again, that's more of a PEIMS thing. That's where it's housed. ELO is housed under the campus programs. And again, this would only be available if you have it selected here on the control info to participate in ELO. All right, let's get into student enrollment. We have quite a few tabs here. This is probably where you'll spend a lot of your time in the registration application as in the student enrollment tab. So just a couple of things we'll go over navigation wise. I'm going to pull up a student. Actually, let me pull up the student. All right. So before we get into each individual tab, I'm going to go over some of the navigation and buttons up here. So first of all is the retrieve. When you go to student enrollment, you're going to be on demo 1 automatically, and nothing will populate until you put in a student name, either the student's ID or you can, like we were showing, let me start over. So I can enter a student's name, start typing. And pull it up that way. I can start entering the student's unique ID if that's what I have. We'll start pulling those kids up. I don't necessarily have to click retrieve, but if I'm starting to type in a student name and I click on it, it automatically retrieves it. I can also go to the directory and search. So if I'm having a hard time pulling it up, or I'm like, I know their last name or part of their last name, I don't know their first name, or I don't know if they're active, maybe they're inactive students and they're not pulling up, what have you. You can change your search parameters, and you can even run it by local program if I want to see just what 504 kids I have at my campus. The nice thing too is that this directory screen gives you a total student count when you pull it up based on your parameters you're searching. So at the high school, I have 151 504 kiddos that are pulling up for my list. And then I can tab through and pull up the student. If I want to see just kids at my high school, all students, I can do that search again. And I have 1,124. So that's a good, just little way to get what your current count is, enrollment count. Obviously, there are attendance reports and things too that verify that information, but this is just a total. And then next year students, if you've pre-enrolled any student, so they're not current year, but they're going to come next year. So this is more applicable toward the end of the school year. You've got maybe your pre-K roundup or something. You've got students that'll be enrolled next year, but not current year. They won't readily show in the directory. You'd have to click next year student to pull those kids up. So the directory allows you to find that information. You also have the historical directory. So this would be if you wanted to search students who were enrolled in a prior school year that are back for re-enrollment, and you want to manually enroll them. So it could also depend on if you're using online registration, new student, returning student, but this is another way to enroll students historically. You can pull up their name, and then you'll see the years that they were in school. Now I'm on a high school campus, so I'm not going to enroll this fifth grader, but and they're currently enrolled anyway, but you could find a student. Let me see if I can find there we go. So this student last attended in 2018. They would have been an 11th grader. So if I click on that and it's green highlighted, it's asking if I'm attempting to re-enroll the student in the current year. And I would say yes if I am, or no if I'm not. But that's what the historical directory is. It'll show you any student that was there previously in your district. And then you may or may not enroll them through this process historically. Again, if you're using returning student or new student registration, you can still bring in their record and match it. If their social security number and their date of birth match, it will flag it and say, hey, this student used to be enrolled in your district. Are they re-enrolling? Do you want to assign them their old or their original student ID, that type of thing. So This is just one way to do it. This is also just what the historical directory is for. And then you do have a TSDS unique ID button. This is mainly for your PEIMS coordinator. If you want to request a unique ID for a new student that doesn't have one, there is some setup involved. So reach out to us if you need that set up. But it basically, you have a user ID and password, and then it's linked to TSDS, I believe, to Teal. There's a way to do it where you can link it and then assign a new ID from there. You also have a comment section. So anytime somebody's left just a generic student comment, it will be available here. So I'll enter one, click OK. And then once I do, I know there's a comment there because there's a little exclamation point and a triangle, kind of a warning like, hey, there's a comment. So then I can click on that and see that comment information. There is also a medical alert. So this button will display if a student has a medical warning. And that is set up in the health application under maintenance, student health and emergency. So if that is set up in health, the health application, it'll show you here and it'll tell you what it is. What is the alert and any action or intervention? And I believe you can have up to two, if I remember correctly. And then one other button that will probably be available that we don't have in our test database because it's not a real database is the document button. So if you have students that, especially if you're using online registration, new student registration through Parent Portal, you may require them to upload documents like birth certificates or utility bills or driver's license, anything like that. If so, and they do upload that information, there will be a document button here, and that will, you can click on it and it will show you that information that's been uploaded. Also, if you, maybe the parent didn't upload it, but you are enrolling the student, maybe manually, and need to upload that information, you will have access through this button to do so. So that is the document button. And then you also have, it's not listed on the PowerPoint, but you have a previous and next. And it just allows you to tab next, next, previous, whatever from the student that you're on to the next record. All right, so let's get into all of these different tabs in our student enrollment area. So we have the Demo 1 tab. This is where all the demographic information is, a lot of PEIMS information. You'll notice anything that is bolded is going to be a PEIMS reportable field, usually. So the record is automatically here. If you've brought it in from registration or returning student registration, if the student is currently active. If you wanted to just enroll a student manually, you can get on this Demo 1 tab and just click enter. And then because we have automated student ID set up, it's telling me, hey, the student ID is automatically going to be assigned when you save the record. And so I can go in here and manually add a record. And then enter a social. If I don't have the social or the student doesn't have a social, I can select that social security denied. Enter a date of birth. What their race is. I would enter their information here. And then if I want to duplicate that address, I can do so. Here's the eligibility code. One is eligible for full day attendance. If they need an attribution code or campus ID of residency, like if they're a transfer student, that will be there. Here's the record status we were talking about earlier, because I have it um, editable in that district setting, I can go in and change that if I want to. But again, it's automatically going to pull based on the information. Now, the as of status last Friday and last day enrollment, that should automatically calculate from Ascender. So don't worry too much about that right now. It is needed for PEIMS, but um, I don't know with the summer submission and things that we've had going on, they've turned off that calculation, but it should automatically populate. And there is a way to override it with this exclude button and then EcoDis if they're EcoDis. And then all I do is save the record. And I guess I do need that in there. All right, so there it is. The system automatically assigned that number. And so now, if he was foster care or military connected, you could add that information. This box applies specifically to attendance zones, which we don't have set up, so you don't need to worry about that. And then here's current and next year information. The control number, that's mainly used for elementary students. If they're assigned to a specific teacher, you would put that control number there. And the transfer factor has to do with attendance codes. And then team codes are for scheduling. So we go over that in the scheduling application. So that's basically what your demo 1 tab is going to do. Then you can move on to demo 2. So counselor information. You can add a counselor if they're set up as a counselor. On that tab we were just on a little bit ago, the principal counselor tab, you can assign a student their specific counselor. It's just kind of locally tracked. You can also enter their 5th, 8th, and 9th grade entry date. If the student is new, they will need a 9th grade entry date, and I believe there's a utility that will assign that in the reset values, which we'll get into in a little bit, but they will need that for test scores, I believe, is one of the many reasons it's there. But if you are importing test scores and you're like, hey, the student isn't importing, usually it's because they don't have a 9th grade entry date. Here's the district entry date, their birth city, birth state, again, birth country. We saw that code table just a little bit ago, and their cohort, which is their group that they're expecting to graduate with. So I think I put him as a 12th grader. So I guess it would be 2026. But these are all just locally tracked fields of information for the most part. I guess this SAT, ACT, TSIA reimburses a PEIMS reportable field that you would select if it applies. But you've got like your primary language, receive transfer. Here's that records request. Also a code table we saw in the district profile. If they've been assigned a locker and you want to have that information housed here, you can do that, combination 1 or 2. Here are the ECDS assessment dates. So it might be a little bit different moving forward because we've had ECDS submissions, and before you would want to put those assessment dates here on this tab to kind of help know where the assessment applies based on their homeroom. But if I recall, and this is more of a PEIMS thing, I don't know if it made a difference for ECDS this year now that it's just pulling everything straight out of the database. So it doesn't hurt to have those assessment dates in there, but that's what this box is for. This applies only to magnet schools. Your local use, this is where we have our local use codes that can be set up. I talked briefly about the completed registration forms. If that was done, you could, I guess it's not a checkbox, it's like a Y or an N, you can save it. Census block. So this will be PEIMS. This is where it's housed on the demo 2. There is a utility or an import rather. So you export the file. It's under the utilities. And again, this is more PEIMS PEM stuff, but you would export your census block, TEA census block. I'm not going to go there, so I don't, oops. Well, it took me there anyway. Export your census block, put it in the tool in TEA, and then import it back in. And then when you add it or import it, it will show down here. You can also manually add it if needed. And then bus information. So this is, again, locally tracked. But if you have bus information that you want to add and run reports for, you can do that here on demo 2. All right, demo 3, more exciting stuff. So you're in status code. This is more for your end of the school year annual student data rollover. Your year-end status code is what tells the system if the student is promoted or retained in the grade level. If it's an SSI promotion, you would select the applicable code, but this is mostly, I mean, year-end status is used for ASDR, but those reasons codes are locally tracked. And then military enlistment indicator is here. There's quite a bit more PEMS fields on this. Here's your CTE program service, your truancy, so excessive unexcused absence, truancy prevention measure, and truancy compliant or complaint filed, rather. That is there in this spot. Utilities will, there are utilities available to set these, by the way, at least for the excessive unexcused absence. I believe, I can't remember if reset values allows you to enter that information, but we can take a look when we get to the utilities. Your dyslexia, this is an important one. So if the student is receiving dyslexia services, you'll want to add that information here. So you put in the entry date, and then the services. Now, this can get a little confusing because this dyslexia risk and screening are two boxes that are just inserted right in this record. But these only apply, I believe, to your first and second graders. And so that will be only for them. But if you're putting in your services for just your regular services, it'll be your entry date up here and then the services reported down here. So that can be a little bit confusing, the way that box is set up. And then you've got your DAP advanced measures there as well. And then you've got your homeless. So if they're homeless, you'd code them here. Early reading indicator only applicable to, I believe, second graders. Don't quote me on that, but only certain grade levels will have that early reading indicator and will allow you to add it. Unaccompanied youth and then unschooled asylee refugee is also here as well. Alrighty, and then you do have your graduation tab. So typically, if you use the graduation plan application, you will not need to do anything on this graduation tab screen. In fact, most of the fields will be grayed out, so you can't add anything to it. So the student isn't assigned a graduation plan. That's why all these fields are available. Except for the graduation type and the grad plan, you can assign that. But you can manually update these fields, add any IBCs here. If you, again, though, have graduation plan set up and that's what you're using, it will automatically populate here from the graduation plan application. But this is where you have your graduation date, Texas First Early High School completion, all of your foundation and distinguished coursework with those endorsements, IBCs and IGC information, speech, date completed, all of that stuff, financial aid application, that's all on the graduation tab in registration. All right, at risk. So this is where you can view and update information related to your students' at risk status. Now, not everything will be manually updated. There are about 10, I think, 10 of the 15 criteria listed here that will allow you to update with a utility. And in the PowerPoint, let me get down there. I kind of break down what each of those are. So they're highlighted. It's set by the utility. Now, some information has to be entered um, in the designated areas in order for the utility to mark it as at risk or, mark that field. But the utility will set these 10 of the 15. The only ones that you have to mark manually would be like the unsatisfactory performance on readiness test for pre-K through third. If they're on parole or probation, deferred prosecution, or other conditional release, the previous PEIMS dropout, residential placement, and incarcerated. So there is a utility, and we'll go over it later when we talk about utilities, the set student at-risk indicators utility. You can run that to update this information right here. And then there is a documentation box if you want to notate that you have documentation for that at risk. All right, contacts tab. So this is where the parent contact information is housed. Now I manually enrolled this student, so I definitely want to put some contact information in there. The priority, you have to have at least one contact and priority one contact for each student that's enrolled. Some of the things that are going to be crucial, and I'm going to pull up my other kid for right now. It's just so I can show you that contact information. If they are marked as parent guardian, and this is especially important this year that we discovered for PEIMS, you want to make sure that their contact information is complete, meaning that they have a complete physical address, so number, street name, city, state, and zip code. All 5 of those pieces of information must be in there. They also need to have an email address, and they should have a phone number. So what we saw a lot of for PEIMS that was causing level 1 errors and just errors in general was that the address wasn't complete or they were missing an email address. And it was particularly if they were marked as a parent guardian. So just keep that in mind, especially as you're accepting enrollment applications and things like that. Or if you're even manually entering the information, please make sure that it's complete. With at least those 3 pieces of data so that if they're marked parent guardian, that it has that information because it'll save you a lot of trouble come PEIMS time. It just was causing a lot of errors having that information missing. So yep, this is where you would enter contact or update contact information. Parents can also update that through Parent Portal, and that's where the pending updates is housed. So we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about online registration. All right, the WR Enroll tab. So this is where the student record is housed to show that they're currently enrolled, or if they've been withdrawn, it'll show the exit date. We'll go over at the end of the training. One of the appendix items is entering a no-show student and re-enrolling a no-show student. So we'll show you how to do that on this tab. But every active student will have an entry date. And then this record. If you need to withdraw them, you'll simply put in a withdrawal date. We're only in here for 2 days, and you'll need a reason code. Oops. Lost my screen share for a second. Sorry about that. And then save. And that will withdraw the student. And now you have that in there. If you're like, oops, I didn't mean to withdraw the student, you can just take out the exit date and reason, and it will reactivate them. You may have to manually re-enroll them in any special programs they were in, but that's how you kind of fix that record. Let's say the student had a status change though. So anytime you're changing either a grade level or a track, maybe eligibility code or CTE eligibility or any of that information, you'll want to do a status change. So you don't want to just come in and type over this and let's say the student is changing calendars, the calendar track. I don't want to just come in and change the calendar track because I want to show that the student was on that calendar for a specific amount of time. And I'm going to do, if I'm doing a status change, I'm going to do this plus 33 status change. So see how it exited the student record and added them. And then on this new record is where I will change the track. So I'm moving them to track 2. And it's saying that's an in-service day. So let me change that to, let's just do that. There we go. Well, and now I need to make sure that I've updated that. So because I had a status change, it will pop up with a warning saying, hey, if you need to change their courses, you need to manually do it in grade reporting. And so our grade reporting bootcamp will cover how to do schedule changes and stuff like that. But for a status change, that's how you do it. You enter the exit date and a plus 33, and it creates this new line. Now, if I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to do a status change, I need to reverse it. You go to the record, the one before it, and click this minus 33, and it will revert the record back to the original. So you can't ever delete the first line of the WR Enroll tab. So just keep that in mind. If you need to reverse something or there's something in error, usually that reverse status change will help with that. And if you ever run into any scenarios where the transactions get a little messed up, let us know. We can help you. But that's basically the WR Enroll tab. It shows their entry date, their grade level, eligibility, if they're CTE eligible, what track they're on. And then this is where you would perform any status changes that apply to the student. Your SPED tab, this is where you would enter SPED information for a student, program information. You also have the special ed application that houses this information, but a lot of it is going to be entered here. It works kind of in tandem with the special ed application, but you would give an entry date, put in that SPED information. There's quite a bit of fields here. Not all of them may apply. But you'll add like their disability code, their instructional setting, child count funding, all that good stuff is entered here on this tab. GT. So if the student is a GT student, you will be able to add a record for them. You just simply click add, have an entry date, and then there are 4 options down at the bottom that are optional if you want to report specifically what their GT record is for. And then if they're no longer in GT, you can put an exit date and a reason code and save it. Bilingual ESL. This is an important tab. So, um, if a student needs coding for bilingual or ESL, um, you would click the add record here, and it would allow you to enter some more information. So specifically, the entry date of their program, um, and any of this coding. Now, your program people should be able to tell you what the coding should be. So this is basically just to show you where it is. Your home language and student language is also populated down here. But you would click the plus add to add a bilingual ESL record. And there's a little bit more information on that in the PowerPoint. So I won't go over it specifically again, because it's kind of specific to the program, and your program people should be able to tell you what information to code in this area, but this is where you would code it. You also have Title I. So depending on your campus or your school, if you're a school-wide Title I or individual Title I, there is, if you're campus-wide Title I, there's a utility you can run to set that. Otherwise, you can also individually add that information here. And this is PEIMS reportable, so you would add your entry date and your code. But like I said, there is a utility, and I believe we go through that later. Yeah, your Title I code conversion, if you're campus-wide Title I and you need to set everything for everyone. PRS, or the Pregnancy Related Services, or CEHI program, is where you would code for any students that participate. You would, again, just click add an entry date, and then select whether they were PRS or CEHI, and if they're CTE eligible during that time. And then when they are no longer in that program, you would give it an exit date and a reason. If they're changing program too, you would just do the plus 33. So if they're changing, they were PRS for a designated time and then they're CEHI, you would add that information, do your plus 33. It needs an entry date, so we'll just say PRS, and then maybe they were CEHI for the rest of the time. And there usually is an EP for exit program, so we'll just do that. Oh, and this student is marked as a male, so that's a good catch. Our test database, we have the genders all different. So even though this looks like a girl, it's marked as a male, so you can't do that. All right, moving on to local program codes. So here's where the local program codes come into play. So we looked at both tables. We looked at the district table and we looked at the campus table. You have two parts in your local program area. You have your local programs for TEA. So these are the programs that are going to be reported to TEA for PEIMS purposes. You can click the plus add. Again, it's going to be an entry date, and then you would select the local program. So only the local programs that are crosswalked for PEIMS are going to show up here in this table. So their dyslexia, you would add that code here. Other local programs are just any other locally tracked program that you want to keep track of. So that might be maybe your club local programs, or anything that is basically not TEA linked will be reported and added down here in this area. And again, like a lot of these other records, if the student is exiting a program and changing, you want to make sure that you use the reason code 33 record status change, or use the exit date if they're ending a program. Pre-K enroll. So let me go to my elementary school. All right, so pre-K enroll tab is specifically for pre-K students. So they have to be a pre-K student. And once they're enrolled, they have to have information, and it does pop up with a message to remind you, like, please enter the pre-K enroll information for these students. But this is where you will add their program information. So again, your program people should be able to tell you what codes to use, but you'll do an entry date. You can do a plus add entry date, the program code. Um, pre-K enroll, pre-K eligibility previous year. There are a couple of different criteria that meet that code. So check with PEAMS on that if they qualify. It explains it a little more in the PowerPoint. But then once you have your program code, you also have your funding source. So what is your funding source and the funding order? And sometimes you may have multiple funding sources, so you can list all that are applicable and then just add the order there as well. So if I needed to add a second one, I could do funding order, source order 2, and then add that there. We'll see if it lets me save. Oh, it does. All right. That is the pre-K enroll tab. And then the forms tab. So I don't think I have any forms for this guy. But let me go back to my high school. There we go. All right. So the forms that display here are going to be from the forms that were filled out from Parent Portal during new student or returning student online registration. And so this is a good way to view the information that was submitted. So I've already accepted her registration from when she did it last year before we rolled the year over. So all this information is there, but it tells you when the parent submitted it, and you can also click the magnifying glass icon to see what was filled out by the parent. It also highlights the date and timestamp and user ID for the parent when they filled it out. And so it's showing 26 and 27 school year. If I just want to filter it by 26, that way I can see whatever's in current year. But yeah, it shows all of those standard forms that are filled out as part of new and or returning student registration. Custom forms for returning student registration are housed in Parent Portal. So you're only going to see those standard forms listed here in this Forms tab. But this is where you can go to view that information. All right, moving along. Now we're in the non-enrolled student. So we'll just kind of briefly talk about this. This is kind of another PEAMS thing. If you have a student who's not enrolled but participates in UIL, because we do report that for PEAMS, you would add their information here. So first you would add it to the demographic information tab, and then you can go to the UIL activity tab and add whatever UIL activity, campus begin and or end date is needed to report for that. So that is all for non-enrolled students. All right, so now we have prior leaver tracking. So this page is going to allow you either to add or update or even just view data for your prior year leavers. So data is written to this table when you run your annual student data rollover process. But if for some reason a student rolled over and you need to make them a prior year leaver, you can also manually add a record here. But typically, the data that's going to be here already is for those leavers, graduates that already graduated from last year. So you can pull them up from the directory. It's going to show you their information, what's going to report for PEAMS. If you maybe had a student that is reporting as a leaver but shouldn't be anymore, you can't delete the record, but you can exclude them from PEAMS if you need to. There is a utility. So if you have no shows in the fall, and this may be changing with PEEMS, if I'm not mistaken, here in the next year or so, how and when leavers are reported. So this might change in the future, but we'll definitely update you as that comes along. Again, that's more of a PEEMS thing, which we do our own PEEMS training for, but this is just to let you know this is where the lever tracking information is housed. So this is the lever tracking table. And again, if you need to exclude the record from reporting, you would do that over here. All right, let's look at Parent Portal. So there's just a couple of options. This area for Parent Portal district and campus options is just to set a district and campus-wide message. So this is what parents are going to see when they log into Parent Portal. They're going to see a district message. So this just says, welcome to Ascender ISD. Campus is the campus message. Welcome to the 25-26 school year. That is pretty much all the options. You do have some update and print letters. So these are just basic letters like registration letters. You can set them up with variables. You can look at the variable table and this is what it houses. Typically, you'll use these letters to send out to parents to let them know what their portal ID is for their students. So one of the things that allows parents to see their students in Parent Portal is linking them through a portal ID, and that's actually housed on the Demo 1 tab. So when a student application is accepted, you have a portal ID right here. This is what the parent will use in Parent Portal to connect their student to their account. So these letters typically, oops, let me go back to update letters and letter. Typically, one of the letters that gets sent out is the portal ID for their students. And any other information you want to add, these are customizable letters. So you have your directory, you would set a letter ID first if you're creating a new letter, and then you would go to that letter. And then where is one that wasn't set up? Anyway, whatever, it would be blank and you could go in and add those variables, type anything you want in here. If you do have a letter that you're copying and pasting over from a Word doc, we do recommend that you first copy and paste into like a Notepad application and then copy and paste to Ascender so that it strips the formatting. We've noticed if you just do a direct copy paste, it sometimes messes it up. But you can preview the letter here, what it'll look like. Wow, that's really teeny. Um, just to kind of see. And then you can make adjustments. Click the edit to go back to it. And so that's the letter. And then once you have the letters created in the print letter area is where you can actually print the letters. So you would get your recipient selection, list of students and directory. So maybe, pull your, campus ID. Let's do that. Pull your student. So it may not be every student, so you can search individually, or you can go through and be like, oh, yep, I know these kids need a letter. How you want to sort the letter, and then the letter template that you just created here, and then you click run, and it will generate those letters. And then say yes. And then it shows you right here who the students are and the letters, so you can review those. Either if that doesn't look right, you can go back and make adjustments, and then print them. Make sure to print them. Print. I don't know why it makes it so big, but you can print it here. And then mark it as printed when you've generated those letters. And then you can preview the labels that generate for those letters. So that is print letters. All right, so let's cover just briefly some of this area for online registration. So like I said, we do have our own training that we do on online registration and new student enrollment, typically the beginning of the calendar year. So stay tuned for that. We do have recordings of those trainings in previous years in our documentation website. So if you need to access that information before then, you can go there. But that focuses heavily on the parent portal side of things. We do touch on this area too, but I won't get into too much detail. Just wanted to show you the pending updates tab. So this is where you would go once a parent has either completed their this pending updates is applicable to returning student registration. So when the parent has completed their returning student registration, it's going to show in the pending updates area. And so any student that has this submitted, you can click on that spyglass to see the details, and you'll be able to see what changed, if there was a change or just what was submitted. It would have a current value and new value, what the field is, and then you can choose whether to accept or reject those pending updates. If you do end up rejecting something, you do have to leave a comment. And I don't know that the parent will actually see this comment, but you do have to provide a comment. And then you can save. You also have an accept all or reject all option, or leave it on pending. And then inquiry just brings you back here. You also are able to have parents update their contact information via student data maintenance, and those pending updates would be here as well. So this kind of looks more like a pending update for just changing an address than it actually does the forms being submitted, because we've already seen those in the forms tab. But then you would be able to accept that information. So that's what pending updates is. And then new student enrollment, this is for any student that is brand new to the district that is submitting the parent submitted an application. So same thing, you go to details and you click on it, and then you're going to enter their grade level, the entry date that they would be starting, their track number, and I have it highlighted in the PowerPoint, their eligibility code. Want to make sure they have a social. If they don't, you would click that social security number denied. Or if parent didn't provide it, and you have it, you can enter it here. Make sure their address is complete. Again, really trying to hit hard on the parent contact information. If they are marked as parent guardian, they need to have a complete address, email, and phone number. Also, it doesn't automatically populate, but you will want to make sure there is a language selected. Otherwise, it will get mad at you. And then because we have the option turned on to automatically assign the student ID, when I click save, it'll auto assign this ID for Harry Potter. If I didn't have that option selected, I would have to manually enter it here. Another thing you're going to want to do on this screen is information request. This is the only area that you can get this information, and it's just a quick view, like a summary view of special program information that's just helpful. Like, are they enrolled in any of these special programs? Or other information. And it also gives you their parent portal key, their date of birth. So there used to be a report that you could run for this, but it hasn't been working lately, like the last year or two in Ascender. So we do recommend that you print it now, because if you don't, it won't be accessible again once you process the application. So not that you couldn't get this information other ways, but it's just a helpful like short report to print or take a screenshot of. And then also if you want to see what forms they submitted, again, those will be available on the Forms tab once you accept their application. But this is also just a quick view of when they submitted that information. So I'm not going to accept that. I'm just going to return without saving. And also to show you on your home page, if you have access to online registration, it will show you those pending updates counts right here. So there is a widget under the quick view. So I don't have it. Let me show you how to add it if you don't have it. You click on this little hamburger ellipsis and you pull this online registration onto your homepage, and then it will show you the number of pending updates to process in registration for the campus. So that's where we were. We were in pending updates. It doesn't show new student enrollment, but that may be a feature that's coming. So, alrighty, we've got so that's a brief overview of online registration. Oh, something else to be aware of, and I know I mentioned this a while back earlier when I started the training, but if you have a student that maybe was at your district, left for a year or two, and then is coming back, and they've filled out new student enrollment, like I said, make sure their social and date of birth match, and if they do, it will prompt you to re-enroll them under their original student ID. So just be aware of that. Their social and date of birth have to match in order to kind of merge their old record with their new student enrollment record. All right, so let's just briefly touch on core collections. This is PEIMS again, but it is housed in registration. So these are where a lot of these core collections are going to be housed. So Child Find, so your SPPI 11 and 12, your State Performance Plan 14, your charter school waitlist if you're a charter school, and SELA, your special ed language acquisition. So not going to hit these super hard, but this is where that information is housed if you're coding for any of these core collections. A couple of things about SPPI 14 though. I'm sorry, SPPI 11 and 12. You would go directly to the SPPI 11 or 12 tab in the campus. If the student was not enrolled and you're trying to add that information, you can add it here and then code their child find data. If the student is enrolled and they do qualify for SPPI and they need to be coded, then you would select the appropriate child find box, and it would have their record show up here. So there she is, because I selected her in demo 1. But if you have questions on how to code or report this, or rather where to report it, the PEIMS department here at Region 10 can actually advise on specific coding or direct you to the program people if needed. You may also have your own campus people that provide the coding to you. But if you need to know where to code it, we're happy to help you with that. But that is for collections. So wow, we made it through the maintenance area. So let's check in on our PowerPoint. We just went through a lot of information. So now we're going to move on to utilities. These utilities, there's quite a few that are available. And again, you may not have access to all of the utilities. There's quite a few if you do, but I'm just going to highlight the main ones that most people will utilize in registration. So we'll first talk about ID change. This is if you need to change a student's ID. or merge an ID. So kind of going back to the scenario we were just talking about where you have a student that used to attend your district and then left and now they came back and maybe they were enrolled as a new student. Their record wasn't merged. So they have two IDs. They have their old student ID and their new student ID. If you wanted to merge those, make it one ID, set the old ID to the new one, you could do that with this utility. And it's just simply putting what their current ID is and then entering what their historical ID was. You would see that information populate down here and you can execute. Now, if you do run into a scenario where you need to use this utility, feel free to reach out to us and consult with us before actually processing, and we're happy to walk you through it. Title I, code conversion. So this is if you want to set the Title I code for every student at the campus. So again, if you're a campus-wide Title I program, you would use this utility. Your reset values utility is very helpful. It's going to help you mass update information in several areas. So not every area, but a lot of different areas. You want to make sure to set your parameters up here first so they can be wide open or they can be specific to a campus, grade level, and track and what students you want to pull. But it will reset items like set or reset, but like that ninth grade entry date or um, a, that CPR date completed. Distinguished coursework. So a lot of those fields for PEIMS reporting that have to do with program. Oh my goodness, I'm losing words here. Graduation plan. So like your distinguished coursework, your FHSP foundation coursework, what your endorsements are. It will set those from like completed or pursuing to completed, that type of thing. Graduation date and type is a big one. You can set in mass the graduation date for your seniors when it's time. There's some other things too. Just anything listed in this table is what can be set, like your year-end status, although there is a utility that will automatically set that. But if you wanted to change the year-end status for specific kids, you could do that. Trying to think what else. Peace officer date completed. And I want to say there was one that was recently added, dyslexia was added. So this utility is very helpful for that. So again, you're going to set your parameters, select the item to reset. Let's just do an easy one, the graduation date, and I won't actually reset it, but this would be maybe where I'm doing just my 12th graders, all tracks, maybe just my active students, and I'm going to set every student to a specific date. And then I click the reset values. And I should have done 2026. Now, when you click reset value, it's not going to automatically reset anything. It's going to bring you up to this parameter page. Again, that's where it's allowing you to truly select the students you want to change. So I can move all students over. And when I save, it will set every single 12th grader in my list with a graduation date. Or if I only want to add a couple of students, like maybe it only applies to 3 of the students, I can select them and just use this arrow and add them over here. And so when I save, it's going to say, hey, all your selected students, so these 3 students are going to have a graduation date entered. Do you want to continue? And then you'll say yes. And then it will show you 3 records were updated, and you can choose whether or not you want to print that report. So that's kind of how you use the reset values utility. And if you have questions on how to use it, as you come across, your individual scenarios for your campus, we're happy to walk you through that as well. Another utility that you'll use, this is more for scheduling, but we'll just mention it briefly, is the Set Next Year Campus. It's still helpful to have a next year campus set up for any of your students, but it's really particularly to scheduling. You just want to make sure that your students have a next year campus. So the ones that already do will be listed here, and the ones that don't will be listed here. So maybe students that are new to the district this year, you can set a next year campus. And then along with that is the student current year under the transfer. So if you need to transfer a student to another campus, you can use this option. So scheduling transfer would be if you were sending like your eighth graders to ninth grade, the high school for scheduling purposes, or student current year would be if you had a student that's in one campus that's going to maybe erroneously enrolled there and you need to move them to another campus, or they were here part-time on this campus and now they need to go to another campus in the district. That student current year utility will allow you to move them. And so how that works though is the sending campus. So pretend I am, let me go to a middle school. I will withdraw the student at the middle school, and then I will be on the high school running this utility. So I'm saying they are coming from the middle school and now they're going to the high school, set the ID, and then perform the transfer. So again, if you have a question on how to do that, or if you're in a situation where you need to do that, let us know. We can walk you through it. TREX export. So if you get records requests through TREX, which many of you will, you can do that through the TREX export. You have a transfer option and a transcript. Transfer is going to extract all the data that you need to send for a transfer student. Transcript is just going to send transcripts, but you'll go to the directory, you'll search, you'll pull up the student, and then you'll click execute, and it will create that file for you to upload through Teal or the TREX. Hopefully you won't have to use this option, but it has been used in the past. Delete a current year student. So sometimes you'll have students that will pre-register on your campus and they're intending to enroll, but they never do. And they end up maybe enrolling in a different campus or what have you. You can delete their record. Or they were intending to enroll with you and they ended up enrolling in another district and you already have their information on your campus, but you just want to get rid of their current year record. That's what this utility does. Just bring up the student ID and click execute, and it's going to just delete the current year data. So you want to exercise caution when using this, but if it's a scenario where the student never should have been enrolled on your campus during that school year, you do have an option to delete the student. You also have the UID processing. So again, this might be more of a PEIMS thing for your PEIMS coordinator rather than like a specific person at a campus. But again, it depends on how your district and campus operate. But if you need to get a unique ID, this is the export for it. And you need to pull up any student that needs the UID assignment. You can also pull that up here, get their UID. When you have it, then you can use the import to import that UID. The set CTE indicator. So this is going to be an important one. We don't report CTE indicators necessarily anymore for PEEMS, but we do need to run the utility because the logic for a lot of the attendance reports and reporting CTE hours and things like that rely on this utility being run. So you run it for fall or summer or both. And then when you're running it for fall, just make sure you put in the correct as of date, which is always the last Friday in October, which I believe this year is Halloween. And then you just execute and it runs and sets everything accordingly. All right, here is your set student at-risk indicator utility. So another utility that you just run, make sure you have the correct as of date, which is the snapshot date, last Friday of October. This current raw score conversion table is updated by TCC, so they should probably have that here in the next little while. But you just execute and it will assign those at-risk indicators like we saw on the at-risk tab under student enrollment for the applicable indicators. And the help doc also explains in a little more detail. I know I had it on the PowerPoint what indicators are updated, but the help doc is really good because it explains in more detail the specific scenarios. So check that out if you have questions. And then we have our create no-show record. So this will be if you use first day counts for your first day of school. So you can either on the first day take attendance manually on paper rosters and then go through and manually add your no-show records, or you can use first day counts. And so we actually go through that first day counts process in a separate training, and it will be offered, I believe, July 28th. So in about a month, the end of July, we'll do our first day counts training and just like a beginning of year procedure. So if your campus and or district wants to utilize first day counts, we'll go through that option in that training itself. But this utility to create no-show records is part of that process. So just kind of letting you know that it's here. You have to have the first day count set up. But this utility will just basically create no-show records for all your students who weren't activated in Teacher Portal. And then we've got our set, where is it? Oh, there it is. Set excessive unexcused absence indicator. So this is the one I was telling you about on demo 3, where you got your excessive unexcused absence indicator. It's another one that you just select the campus and run, but it automatically sets that checkbox if the student has 10 or more days of an unexcused absence within a 6-month period. So you can run this utility for that. And then one other one that's probably a good one is the delete student portal account. This just deletes the account. It can always be recreated. Student portal's a little tricky. We don't house any of the student username or password information in any of the tables in Ascender for safety reasons, and so, or security rather. It's not like parent portal where we have access to that table information. So if a student is like, I don't know my password and I'm not able to recover it, it's really easy to just go in and delete their account, and then they can just recreate it and set it up under student portal. So you just pull up their student ID and execute. All right, so those are the main utilities. Again, if you have other utilities you think you might use and you have questions on them, feel free to reach out to us and or check the help doc as well. Has good information. All right, so oops, we went through all of those utilities. So now we're going to talk about reports. And again, there are several um, registration reports. So we're not going to go through all of them, but we're going to just highlight some and also just talk a little bit about what's available to you. Also create reports, and then registration has a neat little feature. It does have a few historical cumulative reports. So we'll just wrap up our session talking about some of these reports. So if you were in the attendance session, we did talk about, it's very similar. We talked about some of these things. In our registration report, we have, it's kind of broken down into 4 areas. You've got your program, your student, your withdrawal, and your non-enrolled student sections. So you can either pull up the reports by their subsection, or you can go to all and it lists all of them here. But one of the things to note is you can run these reports historically if you have an ending school year field in the parameters. So the campus information report allows you to pull prior years. You'll probably run the the local program enrollment count is probably one that you'll use quite a bit. It's a really good report for local programs. You also have your student special program listing. This will list all the students and their special programs. So that these are both really, really good reports to look at. You also have your at-risk profile and at-risk listing as well. That's under the program report group. Under your student report group, if you're doing census block, you've got that census block group roster, but you have things like just the student name listing with basic information, or like a birthday list or the information sheet. One of the things that's helpful in this group are going to be your student registration forms. So these only print the standard forms. You can print them by specific student, but this will print their standard forms that they filled out in registration. Let's see. If you're using attendance zones, there's some reports for that. And then the rest of them have to do with those core collections. So your SPPI 14 or your charter school waitlist or your child find report, those are off, and your CELA, those are all um, housed here at the bottom of the student report group. Withdrawal is helpful. You've got your leaver tracking report. So this is an important report that you're going to want to run as you're verifying leavers. We saw the prior year leaver tracking report. This is a good one to review. And in fact, we instruct PEIMS coordinators to run that after they've processed ASDR. You've got your withdrawal transfer form. So just the withdrawal form when a student withdraws. You've got your no-show report, your student withdrawal report, and student first day counts no-show report. This is if you're going to use those first day counts, which we'll talk about in our beginning of year training. And then you've got just one for your non-enrolled students. This is just going to pull a report of students that are in that non-enrolled student area and their UIL participation. All right, and then we have our create reports. So like the attendance area, your create registration reports, there are so many fields. I wasn't able to fit all of them on a slide, and you'll see as I'm scrolling down here, it's basically taking almost every single tab in that student enrollment tab, every single tab and segment in those in that student enrollment area, and allowing you to select it for a customized report. So you've got things like your demo 1, so all your demographic information, eligibility, phone and address, your demo 2, like your counselor information, or if you had any of those local use codes that you were using. Demo 3, Graduation, this is a big one. So because graduation plan application does not have any create report, and it's lacking in some of the reports that are available, and we've put in enhancement requests, so we're hoping they'll create some more good reports to verify data. But one way to get around that too is to run a registration create report under graduation, the graduation tab. So you can pull things like the IBC and the graduation date and things like that, endorsements, things like that that you can that specific to certain students. So definitely utilize that. You also have your at risk, your parent contact information, SPED, GT, bilingual ESL, Title I, PRS, the local program code. So this one's really good to pull local program information from that local program tab. Pre-K enroll, and then bus info if you're tracking that on the demo too. So again, lots of customizable options. If someone has created a report and made it public, you'll be able to see that, and they've shared it. They would have added it here. And you may go in and say, oh, so-and-so created a GT listing already. I'll just go ahead and create that report with the parameters they set. And then you can go in and look. And every create report is going to have the date that it's run, the campus ID, the name of the report, and then sort and filter options. So the sort filter will allow you to filter the report, and reset just resets it back to the original. And then you can also export it to PDF or Excel. And then just wrapping up with our historical cumulative reports. So you have three of them. One is a special program information. So based on the school year that you select, or the range, because you can do a range, it's going to list all for the special programs one, it's going to list all the withdrawal and reentry records for enrollment and special programs for the selected student. So you do have to either select the IDs. I think it only allows you to run it for an ID. Yeah. So you can run it for multiple students at a time. You just have to select the ID. You also have the student at risk, or at risk student list. Again, it gives you that date range. It's just going to list all the at-risk records for the students that are enrolled for the date range that you select, and that have been identified as at risk. And then you can choose whether or not you want that documentation checkbox to be in there, and if you want to include withdrawn students. So it's just kind of a summary list of at-risk students based on the parameters that you select. And then the last one is the at-risk student profile report, and that's going to list actual student and their criteria. And this one will require you to select specific students and whether or not you want to print their social on there. But whereas this list is kind of a summary, this is actually going to give you the detail of that at-risk information. So those are the reports kind of in a nutshell. I know we went over that a little bit quickly. Again, a lot of these reports, you're just going to learn as you go and run them and see what works for you. Not every report works for every person. But if you do have questions about any of the reports that you're running or what you need run, let us know, and we're happy to walk you through that specifically to the need that you have. Okay, so we're going to wrap up our training with our appendix on how to withdraw or create a no-show record for a student manually, and then how to re-enter a no-show student. So I'm going to go back to maintenance and student enrollment, and I'm going to pull up my kid here. Go to the WR Enroll tab. So if I'm manually entering a no-show record, one of the things I'm going to want to do is make sure that I'm typing the same exit date as I am for the entry date. So because our first day of school is 8/13, I'm going to add an exit date of 8/13. And because it's the same and the system is already going to automatically know that it's a no-show record. So it will populate that reason code in there for me. Normally you would have to put one in, but if I do this and save it, and then it's going to tell me, hey, they're in special programs, so I'm not going to be able to withdraw them from those programs, so you'll have to manually do it. So just make a note that you need to go in and remove them from those programs. So now the student is inactive. Notice it automatically populated that reason code of 44 as a no-show. Something else to notice, when you do create them a no-show, their record status changes to a 6, and that cannot be manually updated, even if you have that option turned on to manually update the record status. It will not do it for a record status 6. You have to add a new record to re-enroll them if needed. So 6 just means that they're a no-show. So that's how you manually enter a no-show record. Add the same exit date as entry date and save. It'll populate that with a no-show. Now, if you need to go in later and you realize, okay, they're a no-show, but it was because they, I don't know, went homeschool or something. There it is. I couldn't find it. Then you can update that code. And it'll still show them as a no-show, but now you have a reason code attached to it. Okay, let's say, so that's how you manually do it, how you create a no-show. Now, let's say you want to re-enroll a no-show student. There are kind of two scenarios. One is, okay, the student was marked or created a no-show record, but actually they were not a no-show. You can't just go in and delete this line, and you can't really undo that record. Like there isn't a reverse or anything. So if you need to re-enroll the student and get rid of the no-show line, what you'll do is you'll click the plus add. It'll ask you, hey, do you want to re-enter the student? They're a no-show. You say yes. And then if you want to get rid of the no-show line, so maybe this was an error, you're just simply going to type in the original entry date and click save. And then it is going to get rid of that no-show line. And now it's like they were here on the first day of school. Now, let's say they really were a no-show. But they came back the next day. So they weren't here on the first day of school, but they came back the next day. You're still going to click the plus add, but you're going to add a new line and you're going to add the date that they were actually there present for school. And then you're going to save. And so now what you're seeing is you have their no-show line because they were not present on the first day of school, but they were present the next day. And now you have that information there for them. And then their record is all good. And then you'll notice, I think I included it in the screenshot, but if I go to grade reporting, go to their course assigned tab, you'll notice that it updates that entry date. It kicked them out for the one day they were gone and then technically started them on their new enrollment date on their classes. So that is how you do no-show. And again, that's all kind of a manual way. You will re-enroll manually like that for no-show students. But if you're creating a no-show record, you can either do it manually or through the utility if you're using first day counts. So anyway, and it kind of outlines that in the PowerPoint. So hopefully that will be helpful to you. And that concludes our boot camp training. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me. I know that was a lot of information, so it's okay if it didn't all get in there, we are here for you to help you with any of your questions that you have. So please let us know. Um, and thanks for attending. We will talk to you later. Thanks so much.